Hi everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Introduction to Opsgenie. I'm Sean Pinney, and I'm happy to be joined by Kate Clavitt. Kate, how are you?
Good, you?
Doing well. So we are going to jump right in here. A couple housekeeping items. If you have questions, you can ask them in the GoToWebinar panel on the right-hand side of your screen throughout the webinar. And time permitted, we'll answer a couple at the end. And also, oftentimes we get very specific questions, as is the case typically with Opsgenie. Everything's kind of very specific to your use case. So if we do have technical questions or more longer tail questions that we have to take offline, we'll do that. And rest assured, any question that gets asked, we follow up typically within 24 hours. So you do get an answer, even if we don't get to it live on the air. And we're going to spend most of our time in a live demo. But before we do that, we want to talk a little bit about where Opsgenie has come from and where we're going. You can see this is a screen just kind of showcasing a bunch of our integrations. Opsgenie is really powered by integrations. We have 200 plus of them, depending on how you count it. And really, those are the tools, monitoring, logging, ITSM, you name it, chat ops, that allow you to kind of consolidate alerts and bring them in Opsgenie and take care of the basics of alerting and on-call management. And all this stems from, if you think about the typical IT environment and when Opsgenie was founded, we were seeing dev and IT stacks becoming more and more complex. Companies are moving to the cloud, of course, adopting SaaS apps widely. Depending on your size, you might still be like in a hybrid environment or using on-premise systems that you need alerting and monitoring for. And typically what the next step is companies, when they need those tools to monitor their code and their deployments, they're putting tools like Datadog or New Relic in place. And those tools are great. But if you just plug in a bunch of tools, you end up with a ton of alerts, which can quickly overwhelm your dev or your IT ops teams. So important notification when that happens, important notifications can be missed. That alert fatigue sets in. All the communications coming directly at you, and there's lots of noise and irrelevant stuff that you have to kind of sift through, which is the exact opposite of why you put those tools into place in the first place. So if you're new to Opsgenie, we like to think of Opsgenie as sitting right between those monitoring, ITSM logging tools, any tool you're using to track your systems and uptime performance, and your dev or IT ops teams. And then, of course, on the back end, we've got great reporting that we're going to talk about in our demo. So in traditional incident management, there's a bunch of questions you're trying to answer. Who should be alerted, when, how, and has that alert been acknowledged? Who should be escalated to? As we're going to show you with Kate's demo, with a little bit of setup up front, you can start getting all of your teams really dialed into the services that they care about and really dialed into ensuring that relevant alerts are sent to them so they can kind of answer these questions up front once. So then when stuff does happen at 3 in the morning, you have an efficient process in place to handle it. So again, the benefits that we're trying to get to, reducing the noise. A big one is consolidating, deduplicating alerts all in one location. Also with those integrations I mentioned that we're going to talk about, many of them are bidirectional, so being able to take action, inside Jira or from Slack, or keep all information synced in all the apps you're using, not necessarily having to log into Opsgenie every time. And everything's recorded and able to be reported on. In addition to that, I alluded to chat ops and things like that previously, but Slack obviously is a very popular tool. Chat ops practices have been heavily adopted in the last 3 or 4 years. I think most customers of ours are using some sort of chat, whether it's MS Teams or Slack. So now you've got a good process where Opsgenie can communicate with those tools as well. So you've got your ticketing systems, whether it's Service Desk, Zendesk, or whatever else. And basically, no matter what tool or system you're using, you've got a nice closed loop system with Opsgenie sitting in the middle to keep track of the status of an alert or an incident, and also keeping all your teams and even your customers now with our status page integration, being able to communicate out to them the status of an incident or something that's affecting the customer. So again, recording and synchronizing all that information, enabling people to take action within chat environments like Slack or MS Teams, and reporting and analyzing on all that activity. So that's the elevator pitch, the upfront kind of high-level overview. And now we're going to take a look at the actual demo and actually dive into the software. I'm going to hand it off to Kate to do that. your
All
screen.
right. You can see my busy alert dashboard.
Yes.
So initially when you log into Opsgenie, we're going to go through all of the items that Sean mentioned, but the first thing that you and this is because with the way that Opsgenie is set up, teams are the core of how your alerts are routed, how your integrations are configured. So we're going to start in teams. So we'll look at my DevOps team here. Adding a team is very simple. In order to add a team, you would just simply click Add Team at the top and name that team, whichever name is intuitive for you, depending on what you're managing. A brief description, and then easily search for other folks that are within the account. When you first set up Opsgenie, you'll be prompted to add users, and those users will receive an email for them to set up their profile. So it's very simple, and then we have different roles. We have admin and user. An admin essentially is able to control everything, whereas a user can see most items. They just don't have the ability to actually control or configure. So then you would simply click Add. We'll look into my DevOps team that I've already set up just for brevity, of course, because we are on a live webinar. So the first thing, when you click into your team, you're going to see all your team details up front in this main section here. And then on the sidebar, you see all these little different options you can go into in order to configure your account. So that's why most things happen in the team. We're very team-centric, and this is where you can really control everything. So we'll first go into integrations. Opsgenie has over 200 pre-built integrations. We can integrate using an API. We can integrate using email. We can essentially accept anything that sends JSON or HTTPS, but for last resort, we can always use an email integration. So in order to add an integration, you just click Add at the top there. And let's do Jira Software. So Jira Software is one of our bidirectional ITSM integrations. And our integrations framework is set up so that way you have both a simple tab and an advanced tab. We're going to go through the simple tab first. The simple tab is designed to enable you to very quickly set up your integration and just use pretty basic mapping here. So once you follow those steps up top, you're going to come down here and determine what kind of actions you would like Opsgenie to do with alerts created by Jira. So for example, if an alert is acknowledged in Opsgenie, a comment will be added to the issue in Jira. So that way you don't have to go back and forth between the two systems, that synchronization is automatic. You can also create Jira issues for Opsgenie alerts, but theoretically, you're not going to want a Jira issue created for every Opsgenie alert. You're likely only going to want to match specific conditions. Otherwise, you're going to be creating a lot of Jira issues for no reason. A very common application is to only create Jira issues for P1 alerts, because those are obviously high priority, and thus you might want a corresponding issue created in Jira. But you do have the ability to filter based on a lot of different options. You can filter based on source. Perhaps there's a particular source you need to pay extra attention to, etc. So it's good to know that you have these options here in terms of the action mapping. And then in the advanced tab, you can get a lot more granular. Every time an alert comes through from Jira Software, you can add a specific tag here that will just automatically get added to that alert each time. You can set up specific actions. You can add certain content to the message. Perhaps you always want to see the issue key in the message, you can just drag and drop that there, and you'll just tap that automatically. The other thing that I'd like to touch on is the alias field. So in Opsgenie, we assign each alert an alias, and that prevents duplication of alerts. So for example, if you have 5 alerts coming in and they're identical, instead of sending you 5 separate alerts that are going to go through that escalation process each time, Opsgenie will simply send you 1 alert, but increase the count to 5, so that way you can see that 5 have come through, but you're not needing to address those 5 alerts separately, since they are duplicates. And I'll show you that a bit later. So that pretty much covers from a high level the advanced tab. There's a lot more possible here, but we do just want to keep this demo at a bird's eye view situation. So save the integration. I obviously did not go through all the steps, so my form has validation errors since I didn't fill out all the keys, etc. But for this demo, we're going to go back to on-call schedules and escalation policies, which you can achieve by clicking on the breadcrumb at the top there. So most of our customers work out of the Teams page, as I mentioned before, and this is because you can see everything in one place, and you really have access to all of the main pieces that you're going to need on a day-to-day within Opsgenie from the Teams section. The on-call schedule will be blank when you first create your team. I obviously have this team set up and configured because this is the account I use for demos, but this would be blank. The first thing you're going to want to do when you create a team is create a rotation, and that's very simple. You simply click Add Rotation. Rotations can be daily, weekly, or custom. A very common application is a follow the sun schedule. If you have almost 24-hour support, perhaps you have that set up in here. We're very flexible, so you do have the ability to do that. I'm going to do, for the purposes of this, a daily rotation, a daily off hours rotation, so outside of normal working hours. I'm going to add some users to that. You simply just click on participants and add folks. Very simple. And then you can start this schedule depend on whichever date you prefer and whichever time. I'm going to start it at 1700 today. You can end it at any point. You can set that up there. Perhaps you want to end it after maybe you refresh the schedule every quarter or every month or so, and restrict it to time intervals. So for this particular rotation, I only want this to take place during off hours. So it will be time of day, and we'll start at 1700 and then end it at 8 a.m. That's when folks are going to be in the office. So this is just our off hour schedule. And then all I need to do is click Add, and that rotation is all set. You can see that here. Now, if for some reason someone needed time off, was unable to take their particular on-call shift, all I have to do is hover over, and I can click Override. Sorry, I got a little excited with my mouse there. Okay, click Override, and then we'll automatically put me in there, but I can also change it to somebody else if I want to. Click on them and add them in there. And that schedule is all set. Just click Add. And then the final schedule, the overrides show in this section, and the final schedule will show on the bottom here. So you can see that that schedule is all taken care of. It's also worth noting that you can do this both from the desktop and also from the mobile application. So that way, no matter where you are, you're able to make sure that your on-call schedule is covered. Another thing to note is that you do have the ability to export the calendar. You can export it to Google or Outlook. You can also get a shareable link. You can, of course, delete it and edit it from these buttons as well. You can pause a schedule as well, just by clicking this disable button here. So that's something else to keep in mind. And you can always add other schedules. That pretty much covers on-call schedules. The next thing we can cover will be the routing rules and the escalation policies. So routing rules and escalation policies work hand in hand to make sure that the right person is going to be alerted at the right time. We want to make sure that we're alerting people who are available and able to take that alert and work on that problem to resolve it. So let's create a simple escalation policy. I'm just going to name this simple escalation policy just for demo purposes. And then you would put in a description. I'm just going for speed, I'm just going to paste that there. And then you want to add a rule. So for example, if the alert isn't acknowledged within 10 minutes after creation, you have all these different options. You can route it to a specific team. You can notify the next user in the rotation for the schedule, notify all members of the team. Say you have an aggressive SLA, you want to make sure that this alert is handled. Perhaps your SLA is an hour. And that's a bit aggressive if it's an hour for resolution. So you might want to ensure that the admin of the team is notified so they can ensure that the alert, somebody takes action on the alert and resolves that right away. Just click save. You can also repeat it 1 minute after processing the last escalation rule and then limit that to however many times you'd like. If the alert is not closed, you can revert acknowledge and states back. And then once the escalation repeats, you can close the alert automatically. It all depends on your preferences, but this is a pretty basic escalation policy. And then simply click add. And that's all set. So the routing rules basically enable you to use the filters that work best for your purpose. So what we're going to do here, we'll add a routing rule up here. I'm going to name this simple routing rule, just for simplicity. And then you can match very specific conditions. So perhaps you want all P1 to go to a very special escalation policy or a schedule. You have all those options there. Kate's test team. You don't want to restrict that to time intervals, perhaps, because you want, no matter what, it's a P1, it's going to go to these folks. But the other option is you don't need to be bothering people with P1s during the day because they're likely going to be monitoring their computers, etc. So you can restrict to time of day, weekday and time of day, perhaps. If it's off hours, you want to escalate it to, if it's a daytime and it is a low priority informational, you don't want to really route that to anybody, but you do want to have that record of that alert. So there's a lot of different flexibility that you can do. You can match all the alerts, match one or more conditions, match all the conditions, and you can restrict it to weekday and time of day. So very common on off hours, we don't want anybody being bothered by P4s and P5s. So we can ensure that P4 and P5s, weekdays and time of day, Monday through Friday, no one's really going to be bothered by those unless work is open, because there's no point waking somebody up at 3 a.m. for a P4 or P5 informational, lower informational alert. And we'll just change this and then click add. And that's all set. So the other thing that we're going to want to look at that you would access from the policies tab are alert policies and notification policies. So alert policies are basically a global or team-based rule that indicate an adjustment or add something to a corresponding alert. So let's click on add alert policy to sort of show how that works. So you always want to name the policy and then give it a description that's intuitive, enable that policy, and then if you don't hit continue with the next policy, the other policies in the account are not going to go through. So you want to select that as well. if the following conditions are met. So a common activity is, say you have a lot of your infrastructure on AWS. If the source contains AWS and the priority equals P2, then you might want to always escalate the priority to P1 and ensure that that gets resolved quickly, simply because most of your infrastructure is depending on AWS. And now this is a very basic example. You may want to get a bit more specific, but you also have the option to add specific tags, take specific actions. You have a lot of different options here to really route the alerts accordingly. So you can add that alert policy, and then you would just click create and enable, and that's all set. The next thing that we want to talk about are notification policies. A common application for these is folks will automatically delay, suppress, or auto close low priority alerts and restrict that to time intervals. So let's say that it's off working hours. You don't want anybody to be bothered by these. We do want a record of them, but we don't want folks having to read them. We're just going to create this policy to auto close them as long as the priority is informational. And then just down here, you can check auto close. And you can close the alert automatically after 3 minutes. After 1 minute, you can determine the time interval and then create and enable the policy. There are a lot of applications for this, but this is a very common one. So the next thing that we'll cover are your profiles. So once you create your Opsgenie account, one of the first things you're going to be prompted to set up is your profile. And you want to make sure that you're entering the most relevant and accurate information here, because this is where your notifications are listed, your notification methods, and you want to make sure that those are correct. So you have, of course, your very basic account information, and then you click on the notifications tab. So here is where you're going to be filling out your email, your phone number that you want to use for SMS, for voice, mobile application, and then your notification rules. So I have it set up so that way I get notified immediately by a mobile push, and then also by an SMS and an email. But it's very common to stagger these. So perhaps you just want to have an email record, so 20 minutes after you'll get an email, you're going to get a mobile push immediately, and then maybe in case you missed that mobile push, you'll get that text message 5 minutes afterward. One thing that I do recommend is always having some kind of catch-all rule that will take that alert. So that way, so for me, my backup method is email. You always want to have something immediately and then something as a backup. That's my best suggestion, just in case one of those notification methods fails. So now that we've covered that, let's go back to the alerts dashboard. So the alerts dashboard, as I mentioned before, this is where you're going to take most action on alerts. Let's look a little bit closer at an alert. So I mentioned before that there was alert deduplication based on the alias. That's this here. So you see this count is increased to 2. That means that I've gotten 2 of the same alerts, and instead of sending me 2 separate alerts, Opsgenie has deduplicated them and sent me 1 consolidated alert and increased the count. You see the priority for this particular one is a P3. It's routed to my DevOps team. And then I have the option here to take actions. I can assign, add a responder, snooze it, or delete. I can also acknowledge or close. So I'll acknowledge that alert, and let's click into it a bit more to see some more information. So it appears that this is coming from a subscription to an external service status page. Shopify is having some issues. So that's all listed here. And then if you go into the activity log, Sean had mentioned earlier that everything is recorded thanks to Opsgenie, you'll see here that that's the case. It shows you that it sent a Slack message to this particular Slack account, which is integrated with this Opsgenie team. You can see all the activity, where the activity was taken, etc. So this is really helpful to have. You see the notes here, and then you can add a note as well, very simply. You can add tags up here. I'm just going to close this alert so you can see what that looks like, and we'll go back to the alert dashboard. It's very simple to search for alerts in the alerts dashboard. You can create a saved search. You have a few different options. You can simply filter the alerts page using time. You can also sort based on when created, occurred. We have a few different views depending on what you're most comfortable with, if you like a little bit more white space or a little bit less. And then you can also search by source. So let's say Shopify. All the Shopify related alerts will show. And then I can save this particular search query, and I'm going to name it Shopify search. And you can share that with others in your account, or keep that private to your team or private to you. So I'm going to keep it private to me and then click save. But you can also use, we have information in our documentation on how you can use different queries in order to search using this Google style search bar, or you can simply use these different filters here. A common thing that folks do is they want to search for obviously all open alerts. That's something that you can save. That's also quickly available on the side here. You can see closed and unacknowledged as well. So that pretty much covers all of the information that you're going to get on the alerts dashboard at a high level. So back to how Opsgenie records everything. Let's take a look at the reporting and analytics briefly that are available. So this is where you'll see, this is the reporting page. You'll be able to really dig into some of the data being recorded during the entire life cycle of the alerts. You open into a quick insight report. So this shows you alerts per team, so you can see which team is handling the highest volume of alerts, mean time to resolve and mean time to acknowledge, the number of alerts created per hour and created per day. So this is just meant to be a high-level report. You can also click into the alert analytics. That's going to just take a moment to load. So you can really see the breakdown of alerts per status, how many are open, closed, and acknowledged, alerts by priority, daily alerts by priority, etc. Alerts per tag, which is a very helpful breakdown, and then alerts per source. So if you have a really noisy alert source, you can use this information to determine, is it time for a technology refresh? Are my alerts just not, have I just not set up my account properly, so I'm getting too many alerts? Do I need to reallocate resources to a particular team? So there are some really great insights you can get in there. For the purpose of brevity, I'm not going to go too far into all the different reports, but API usage is another common one, and you can really see everything that's available here. The other thing that's useful is you can filter the reports from this handy form based on the date created. Maybe you don't want the past 7 days, maybe you would like the past 30 days, and then you can just click run. And then once that's done, you'll see here for the last 30 days the information there. Another thing that is really helpful is you can download these reports as a PDF or as a CSV if you want to pair them up with some other data. You can also schedule and send them. So perhaps you'd like to report on a monthly basis to a CTO or somebody in upper management who doesn't necessarily work in Opsgenie day to day, but you'd like them to see what kind of work your team is doing. You can automatically schedule that report And I'm just going to show you quickly how to do that here. The internet is a bit slow at the moment. Oh, I was about to start playing the Jeopardy music. Perfect. Okay, so who's it going to be emailed to? What name do you want to give it? Would you like it to be PDF, a visualization image, or a CSV? If you're sending it to somebody in upper management, likely you just want them to get a quick PDF, bird's eye view, and perhaps you'll send that monthly. And then you can schedule that to be on the first of each month and pick the time, etc. So you have a lot of different options there. And then you just simply save, and that alert's going to get sent for you on a regular basis. So,
sorry, Kate,
yeah.
there's a question that ties to that about alert reports and
Yeah,
how
please.
many months you can view at once. I think it's, you can kind of view, you can set it up like you just showed, like by day, week, or month for the report. Is that correct?
I don't think I get the question. So
just in terms of alert for the report that we're on right now, like how many months can you view? I think they're asking how many months can you view in a certain time period.
Oh, I see. Yeah. So it depends on your plan too, I think, depending on your data storage with us. However, that's probably the main limit there.
Yeah.
This account hasn't been around for 30 months, so I can't even do that. But yeah, that's something that would depend on the plan that you're on.
Great, thanks.
Of course, thank you. Any more reporting related questions?
That was the only one at the moment.
Awesome. So that pretty much concludes the high level demo. It was a lot of information, so feel free to ask questions if you have them. As Sean mentioned, we'll do our best to follow up.
Yeah, we've had a few questions come in.
Great.
We want to jump around a little bit. We've been online for 30 minutes, so we can answer a few, and then we can, like Kate said, we can take them offline. Let's go from the top. Going back to, I think it was on-call schedules. This person has an example where they solely want to set up a weekend schedule.
Okay.
They're wondering if they can do that.
Yes, so let's do that really quickly. So all you would do is add a schedule or a rotation, and then click add a rotation, name that weekends only, or whatever you prefer to name it. Let's see, let's add some folks to the schedule, and I'll add me. So rotation type would be weekly, and then restrict to time intervals, weekday and time of day. And then you would say, it depends on, some people feel the weekend starts on Saturday, some people feel it starts on Friday, but you can do Saturday to Sunday. And so what would happen is this would occur only on Saturdays and Sundays every week. But for example, if you're working in an office, maybe the weekend starts Friday at 1700. You can do Friday to Sunday.
Great.
And then just adjust the time based on your needs. And click add.
Great, thanks. And there was a few different people asking about on the integration side.
Sure.
Let's see if I've got this. Basically associating, their example was a Jira or a ServiceNow ticket number with an alert. So an alert creates a ticket in the tool. Is there a way to map basically ticket information back into the alert dashboard or on the alert that is coming from like Jira, for example? And that may be a specific one we can take offline, but that's another story we can.
Yeah, so the alert's created in Opsgenie, and they would like information from that alert to map into the ticket. Is that correct? Okay, so that's something that you would do down here with the action mapping in the integration. So if you're going to send alert updates back to Jira. So for example, you have it set up so that way a Jira ticket creates an Opsgenie alert. And then you want certain information to go back to that Jira ticket that created the alert. You do that down here. So if the alert is acknowledged, you add a comment to the issue in Jira. You can change the status, you can create an additional issue, and you can add a bunch of different actions as well. So that would take place here, but it can also take place on the advanced tab as well, which you can see here, create alert. This is just more granular view where you have a lot more control.
Got it. Great.
That was a great question.
Okay, let's see what else we have here. There's a bunch of questions, so thank you guys for asking questions, and we'll make sure to get answers to all of these. Cool. People asking about status page. I don't know if we have status page set up on this account. We can. That's another one we might be able to take up the line.
I think I do. What's the question?
Just how kind of that integration works at a very high level, basically. You know.
Yeah. Sure.
Everyone's instances, use case is a little different, but we can at least talk high level. And then if you have more questions specifically, we'll follow up offline and get you additional help.
Yeah, so the status page integration is pretty simple and pretty quick to set up. It just depends on what you want to do for that. So, for example, you do have an option for Opsgenie to update a component in status page based on the alert status and the incident status, which I have configured down here. So a tag is added to the alert in Opsgenie, create an incident in status page for these tags. And so then you would just need to follow the documentation for the specific tags that you can do that for in order to get the result that you want. So we do have documentation on that on our status page documentation page. The other thing that we've done with status page is external services with status page. So that's where my Shopify alerts are coming from. If you just go to the services page in Opsgenie and click add service, external service, you can add any external facing status page that is available. So for example, Twilio is a good one. And then you have the ability to filter into specific components if there are only certain aspects that you're concerned about, or you can subscribe to all of them. And then what's going to happen is you're going to name that something relevant to your account, private to team or public to organization, and then determine the owner team, and then just click add. I already have Twilio added as internal conferencing here. And so you can see that I'm getting all of the information from and updates from the Twilio status page. The other thing that you do when you set up the service is want to make sure that the mapping makes sense to you. So for example, automatically what will happen is if something is scheduled maintenance, it's going in Opsgenie, it's going to come in as a P4 or a P5 depending. So that you can do here. You can determine if the status page incident is critical, should the corresponding alerts also be critical. And the great thing about this is you can automatically get alerts sent out to your team based on those issues with those services that are mapped to the external status pages. So hopefully that helps. I know it's really high level.
Yep. That's good, thanks. Okay, maybe do one or two more here. Let's see what else we have that we can answer online. Will the setup of a notification will allow set up by an admin supersede anything that a user sets up?
Yes, and then there's also, so that's where policies come into play as well. If you have a global notification policy set up where that will supersede anything that a user sets up. So that's one thing that will supersede what is set up by a user. But anything set up by an admin will automatically supersede what's set up by a user. Absolutely.
Great. Okay, great. Well, I think that's good for today. We've got a couple more questions that came in, but we'll take, like we said, we'll take those offline and get them answered. And if you have any questions in the meantime, you can always use the chat bubble in the app or on opsgenie.com. This has all been recorded, and we're going to email it all to you and everyone else who registered, by this time tomorrow. So you'll have the information, and we'll have somebody follow up on the other specific questions as well. So thanks for joining the webinar, and we will see you next time.